your cookbook. Is there one thing that you cook that you want to share with people?
There's so many that I love.
All right.
But before we even go there, I can't help but think about the Mediterranean here for a moment. So, you know, so you mentioned, where do they get their food from? Where do they get their food from? Where does the produce and everything come from?
Well, so the priority is whatever they can actually get and grow locally,
Exactly.
right? So here's some great things. Capers. They
Oh,
grow rocky little things. They pick them by hand. They're wild. They wash them. They rinse them. They brine them. Put in a little vinegar. They store them. They jar them. This is what they bust out when there's visitors. Tomatoes. It's tomato season in the summertime. They pick them. They harvest them. They bring them fresh. They buy them in the morning. They eat them at lunch and at dinner, and then they reload the next day by going back out to the market. It's a different mindset, but they're really proud of what they have. Now, obviously, look, we're in the 21st century. Planes fly, boats sail, trains deliver all kinds of stuff. So yeah, sure. Even in the Mediterranean today, if you look for the mass market stuff, you can find it, and that's the stuff that's actually bringing down their health too.
well, and yeah, sure, you could get a Coca-Cola Classic if you want it, but you probably are paying $7 for that, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's part of the issue. But what I come back to, Will, thinking about the Mediterranean and why this is so beneficial, is that these are food traditions that originated prior to modern times.
Right.
And so because of that, they had to eat local. They had to eat whatever was available to them. They didn't have the advantages of a Whole Foods or Fresh Market or whatever it may be. And as a young country in the United States, we didn't establish, also being a melting pot, we didn't have those established food traditions that are based upon certain local foods. And so, as a result, I think we were more prone and susceptible to falling into the trap of just kind of eating whatever was presented to us.
We also want to have things that are convenient and less expensive. Whereas I think that in many other food cultures, they actually invest in their food because they know that what they are eating is going to go into their body and it's going to affect how they feel. So they're much more in tune with, I think, the land and the food and how they feel about it. I think that if there's anything that I would say growing up in America, is that it's easy to get disembodied from yourself so that you're not thinking about how you feel after you eat. I mean, you talked about, laying down on a couch after to recover from dinner. Like, I think that, in most places in the Mediterranean that I know, my friends they'll have a great meal and then they'll go out for a walk, and because they feel good about it. And it's a beautiful location as well. And they feel better and they sleep better afterwards as well. As where it's you and I, getting our butts kicked in medical school and in medical training, like we get like no sleep on an on-call night. And by the way, that's so destructive for us. And so I think that, kudos to anybody who's a doctor. And this is what I'm trying to do by bringing my doctor friends onto this video series. Like, look, we're real people. We are just as vulnerable to the junk that's out there as anyone else. In fact, I would say maybe even more, because we got our butts kicked in training, and pretty much every sensibility that we should have had for health, even though we're supposed to be healthcare providers, got stripped away from us. And so we've had to like earn it back and own it. So I think that the fact that you put out two New York Times bestsellers proves the fact that people want to hear from a credible source that actually can walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Well, think about how we're talking about doctors, and the rigorous lifestyle that we're forced into as a part of our medical training. And it's really no different than what a lot of people go through who live in poverty, to be honest with you. Think about the mom who's working two jobs to put food on the table for her kids, right? And because I know a lot of these people, and um, they don't have time to come up for air. They don't have time to take a
Yeah.
break. They
Right.
need they need food that's inexpensive and cheap and quick and delicious. And so they fall into the exact same traps that you and I did.
Right.
And so, and then you see what happens in those communities where socioeconomic status becomes such a powerful thing in terms of health outcomes. This is part of the issue.
And on the other side of it, you see why doctors, many of them wind up being so ill prepared to talk about nutrition
Right.
because they actually haven't had a good necessarily good life themselves. Now, I'm going to ask you one quick question about what's in your book. So, just to tell you a little story. So, I am always fascinated by what the local market has.
Yeah,
Do you have anything with, is there any recipes contain garlic in your book?
tons. I'm a huge
Okay,
garlic fan.
cool. So let me just tell you something that I was at the market the other day and I found, it's a farmer's market. I found garlic scapes. Have you ever cooked with scapes?
No, tell me about that.
All right. So the garlic bulb is under the ground, right? It's the white, flaky skin thing, right? You got to peel it to close her inside there. It's got little hairs or the little roots on the bottom of it. Well, the stuff that's above the ground is this large, twisty stem-like thing. I'm going to show you a picture of it, and I bought it. And I've cooked with scapes before. They taste like garlic, but here's what's wonderful about them is that you can actually caramelize them. So what I did is I took these garlic scapes. I'm just looking for a picture of my phone. I can show you on the screen here. Here it comes. I think I have it close by, and they're long, twisty things. I'll check it out. I got it right here. Look at this thing,
Oh,
garlic
wow.
scape.
Yum.
That's the stuff on top of the garlic. Now
Yeah.
you cut that up into like 2-inch segments, put it onto a cookie sheet, sprinkle a tiny bit of sea salt, a little extra virgin olive oil, and then because I like to do it together with some other vegetables, I take some shiitake mushrooms, slice them up thin, stick them in there, put them in an oven like at 400 degrees for 7 minutes. And what winds up happening is that the olive oil will actually start to cook and caramelize the garlic scapes. Your whole house will smell, have this wonderful aroma of a finished dish. But here's what's great. You take it out of the oven and you let it cool. Okay. And now you've got these caramelized, slightly crispy things. And then you can scoop them and you can just pop them into a salad. You can snack on them. There's so many different things you can mix them with. And it's a delicious, you can put it into pasta. It's a delicious way of doing it. So that's one of the more recent things that I actually cooked.
Oh, I love that. All right. So a couple things that I've been working on recently.
Okay.
I actually have 2 chapters in the back of the cookbook that I believe are unique to a cookbook. One is about fermentation,
Oh,
and the other is about sprouting. And I believe that these are 2 opportunities from a gut health perspective to enhance your gut health that most people are not doing. So fermentation, there's actually 17 recipes that I have. And there was a study that was done by people that I'm quite sure you know. I know them, Professors Sonnenberg and Gardner from Stanford University,
mhm.
published in the journal Cell right around a year ago. And what they found is that in an interventional trial, when they forced people to consume fermented food, because people were not consuming fermented food, most of us are not.
Mhm.
When they forced people to consume fermented food in just 10 weeks, they enhanced the diversity of their gut microbiome. That's a measure of their gut health. And they also reduced measures of inflammation. I think that fermented food should be a part of everyone's routine. So
So you teach people how to, in your cookbook, how to do their own fermentation?
yeah, so there's 17 fermentation recipes. I actually teach you how to create your own sourdough starter, multiple recipes to make with that starter. We have sauerkraut, we have pickles, we have kimchi.
Fantastic.
So I right now am drinking some kombucha downstairs. If I were to take you downstairs, I would show you my little food lab. I have a food lab in one
What do you call the thing in the kombucha, the floaty thing?
SCOBY, the SCOBY.
SCOBY. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, the SCOBY is at the top. I also have a kvass. So now kvass, fermented foods are celebrated food traditions from around the
Oh
world.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kimchi in Korea, sauerkraut in Eastern Europe, et cetera. You could go down the line. So kvass is a Eastern European beverage, and we make kvass in the Fiber Fields cookbook with beets, pears, and ginger. And
All
here's what's
together.
cool. All together. Now here's what's cool. This is what I love, Will. Number 1, there is no added sugar.
Beets have their own sugar.
Beets, pears,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
have their own sugar,
Yeah.
right? So you have the sugar that you need for fermentation, because in order to ferment, you do need that. But number 2, there's no added microbes. The microbes naturally exist
In the
on the
air.
skins of the ginger and the pears and the beets. They're already there. They're there when you purchase them.
Interesting.
And so by quite simply putting this combination together and then submerging it in some water, you within 24 hours will have bubbles.
Okay. Now you
And
do this like in a jar or in a bowl, or what do you actually ferment it in?
so when I do beverages, I go big because from my perspective, I don't want 16 ounces that I had to wait 5 days for.
Right, 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 right.
I want 32 ounces or more.
Okay.
So I get jars with a flip top lid.
Yep.
All right. And so the flip top lid will create a seal. Now, the thing that you do have to do, because I'm not kidding, you will have bubbles in 24 hours with these things, is you have to burp it.
You do.
So by burping it, what I mean is you go and you open up the jar and you allow the gas to come off.
Is it stinky?
No, it's not stinky. It smells great. It smells like ginger. But
Oh,
the issue is that if you don't burp it, it continues to pressurize, pressurize, pressurize.
boom.
Exactly. What happens if you take a beer and you shake it up or
Right.
right? So that's what happens. And so you have to burp it. So I actually missed a burping session on my kvass one day
What happened?
and we got beats on on the wall. So
It's so interesting. I wouldn't have thought of putting beets and pears and ginger, although I love all three together. What does it taste like? Can you describe it?
okay, so the beets impart that, I mean, I think it's beautiful, but it's like a basically deep magenta red. And the liquid becomes opaque. You can no longer see through this. And this is because of the beets. So you combine that with the ginger gives you that mellow sweetness. And then the ginger, I'm sorry, the pears give you that mellow sweetness. The ginger gives you that punch of ginger.
Hmm.
You put these three together. Now, what is fascinating about fermentation, and one of the things that I love, Will, is that flavors change.
Yeah, of course.
The profile changes. And where you end up, like if you were to sip this on day 1 or 2, it would taste like beets and pears and ginger.
Okay.
Where you end up on day 5 or 6
All right. Tell me.
is a melding of these flavors together. And it's hard to describe other than it has
Is
changed.
it like hard cidery or is it smooth or
Smooth, not spicy, not spicy.
so the
Uh,
ginger's been mellowed out?
the ginger has been mellowed out. I'll give you another quick example. One of the recipes that I have in the Fiberfield cookbook is for fermented radishes.
Okay. Yep.
Now, as you know, radishes are health foods. These are great for you.
Yeah.
The problem is that I actually don't like them. I just
Hmm.
have to be honest. Like I don't like the pepperiness of the radishes.
Yep.
If you ferment radishes,
What do
it
you
is
get?
it is a whole new game. So number 1, they are crispy. They're crispy as hell. All
Okay.
right. Crunchy. But the flavor, the pepperiness gets smoothed out so that it's really in the background. And then you bring in whatever new flavors from your fermentation. So pretend you do garlic, dill, and black peppercorns.
Okay.
It's going to taste like a little bit like a pickle,
Wow.
but the
Cool.
crunchiest pickle that you've ever had. And we all know that you love a crunchy pickle.
So here we're back to your roots as a chemist, right? You got your basement with all this stuff going on and your experiments, and as you were talking about burping your container, I was thinking about chemistry class. Like how you have to tend to the Bunsen burner so nothing boils over or burns, right? Like you got to kind of be on top of it.
I actually have a food scale, a digital food scale, and the time that I pull it out is when I do fermentation. And it's because I actually feel like a chemist. I'm being very precise in what I'm
Yeah.
doing. But the other thing that I encourage people to think about with fermentation, there's two things I want to just bring forward for people because I'm a passionate advocate for this type of food. Number one, fermentation is transformation. You transform the flavors, but you also are transforming the biochemicals. You get new types of fiber. There's a change to the proteins. You are actually reducing the presence of anti-nutrients, or if there were toxins, for example, if your food were sprayed with a chemical, actually the fermentation removes that. You are enhancing the vitamin content. I mean, it's amazing
How
that
does
you
how does a, how does the vitamin content get enhanced? I guess different ingredients together.
Well, when you think about, for example, B12, Will, now I'm not saying that the B12 is specifically is in fermented foods, but the B vitamins are in fermented foods, the B vitamins.
Yeah.
B vitamins are energy vitamins, right? And so when you think about, for example, B12, B12 is produced by microbes. Microbes are capable of producing, when you give them the proper ingredients, they will produce things for us. And
So you
part of
create a
what
little factory. You've created a little vitamin factory with your fermentation. Uh,
100%.
that's so cool.
The other thing that you've done is you are cooking, but it is the slowest cooking ever. When we talk about slow
Slow
cookers, we're
food.
talking about 8 hours, right? People are slow cooking their food. This is the slowest cooking ever. You're slow cooking over 5 days.
Well, one of the things that I'm writing about in my next book is the fact that a lot of our food culture, just as you were talking about, come from thousands of years ago. So these techniques are, they may sound new if you're not familiar with them, anybody listening or watching this, but in fact, they've been known for thousands of years. And I'm writing about this incredible historical phenomenon where food and goods were traded along the Silk Road.
Yeah, yeah,
Not the internet Silk Road, but the original Silk Road that connected China to Turkey in the Mediterranean and went through all these mountains and deserts in Central Asia. And you could not bring fresh food for any great distance. And so a lot of the foods that were carried along were fermented in ceramic urns that were on camelback. And so a lot of the stuff, by the way, that sauerkraut, which I used to always think was a Germanic Eastern European food, right?
right.
Cabbage, fermented, sliced up. And, when I was growing up, it was always put on hot dogs or whatever. Now I love it by itself. But it came from Chinese cabbage that was attempted to be transported over the Gobi Desert all the way over to Europe, and they would never last. And so they figured out how to ferment it, and it wound up eventually making its way into Eastern Europe and establishing itself as a tradition. And so, one of the things that I think is so wonderful about what we're talking about and what you have in your new book is really trying to bring into a modern context things that can't be wrong because they've been used for thousands of years.
Yeah, I view my cookbook, part of what I'm trying to accomplish is to take you on a culinary world tour. And what you're going to find is celebrated food traditions from across the globe, and you're enjoying them from the friendly confines of your own kitchen.
Well, listen, this is great. I need to wrap up right now, but look, thank you so much for sharing. And one of the things I wanted people to do is to really be a fly on the wall and hear, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz and Dr. Will Lee having this conversation. And we could have been having this conversation sitting at a cafe someplace in the Mediterranean.
I wish we were.
So listen, tell everyone watching where they can find out more about you and your book.
Okay, so my book, The Fiber Fields Cookbook, is widely available, not just in the US, but including in the UK, Canada, Australia. And again, this is more than a cookbook. It's 125 recipes. It's full color photography, but it also is 11 chapters. Most of those chapters actually don't involve recipes. They involve me educating. And it has two recipe-based protocols. So I actually have protocols built into the program. So the Fiber Fields Cookbook is widely available. I'm very proud of it. And if you check it out, please reach out to me through social media and let me know what you think of it.
How do people find you on social? What's your handle?
You can come to Instagram and Facebook at the Gut Health MD. I'm technically on TikTok, but I'm just getting started. So I'm the Gut Health MD _. I had to add an underscore to the end. And finally, come to my website, theplantfedgut.com, sign up for my newsletter. People seem to really love it. When there's breaking news research, this, Will, it's really hard to have a nuanced conversation on social media about research. So I like to send an email to my list. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, sign up for my email list.
I'm totally telling people to sign up and check you out. And by the way, TikTok, I started myself not too long ago, and I was amazed at how much traction. I did a video about carrots and carrot tops, and it had 1.1 million views.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Amazing.
And I didn't have to dance or, talk about my fiat or whatever. Um, so anyway, so listen, if you want to learn more about gut health, please check out Dr. Will Bulsiewicz and the Fiber Fueled Doc and the Fiber Fueled book and the Fiber Fueled cookbook. You should actually have the whole collection. Like I've got a whole collection now, and that should be in your bookshelf or on your mobile if you're doing audio. And then if you want to learn about more about me and food as medicine and the work that I'm doing, I do have a free resource available on my website. So come sign up and download it. It's at www.drwilliamlee.com, Dr. William Lee. And I'll just leave you with one thing that I think, Will, you and I both share was that, you got to really enjoy your food. It should really speak to you. And so what I always tell people is you should really love your food to love your health. And so with that, thank you very much. And we'll see you again soon, hopefully.
It was a great conversation. Thank you, Will. And thank you everyone for hanging out.
Bye.